Welcome to the deep dive. You're here because, well, you want to get straight to the core of things, fast, and maybe with a bit of curiosity thrown in.
That's the goal.
Today, we're really diving into a topic that, let's face it, affects so many people. Anxiety. We've gone through quite a bit of material, expert insights, practical
Yeah,
guides.
a lot of solids there.
And our mission here is pretty clear. We
hmm
want to pull out the most useful, the most actionable strategies from these sources to help you build your own kind of toolkit for handling anxiety, whatever form it takes for you.
Exactly. And the material we looked at, it isn't just theory. It's really grounded in practical, usable techniques. It gives you that foundation, sure, but the real power is in the what to do.
Okay, let's get into it then. Based on these sources, what is anxiety really? And how's it different from just being scared?
What's interesting, they draw a really clear line. Fear, they say, is usually linked to something specific, something right there, often outside, seeing that spider, or maybe a big work deadline looming.
A clear threat.
A clear and present danger, yeah. Anxiety, though,
Yeah.
that tends to be more spread out,
Yeah.
diffuse. You might not even know exactly what's triggering it sometimes. It's often about what might happen, future worries, that feeling of unease about things being uncertain or maybe feeling like you're losing control.
Ah, okay. So fear is like, whoa, look out, a bus. And anxiety is more, what if a bus comes out of nowhere sometime? Maybe. Or maybe it's like a falling piano.
That's a pretty good way to put it. It's that known threat
Yeah.
versus wrestling with all these possibilities. And the sources really stress very strongly that anxiety isn't just a head thing, it hits your whole system.
Right.
It's this complex mix of, physical feelings, how you act, and your mental state all kind of swirling together.
Physical meaning the heart pounding, muscles getting tight, that sort of stuff.
Exactly that. The racing heart, the shallow breathing, maybe sweating, stomach issues, muscle tension, all that. And behaviorally, it can make you freeze up, feel paralyzed, or, and this is really common, make you avoid things.
Ah, avoidance.
Big one. And psychologically, it's that constant sense of dread, the worry, the restlessness, maybe even feeling a bit detached, like you're not quite there.
Yeah.
The key thing the sources hammer home is that good coping strategies have to address all three parts.
Makes sense. Body, mind, actions. And it's not just one thing called anxiety, is it? The sources talk about a whole range.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a spectrum.
Yeah.
From just a little bit of background unease kind of nagging at you, all the way to a full-blown panic attack, which can feel terrifying.
Right.
And it can pop up seemingly out of nowhere. That's spontaneous anxiety, or it can build up because you're anticipating something stressful. That's anticipatory anxiety.
Like worrying about a presentation for weeks beforehand.
Exactly. They also mention situational anxiety tied to specific places or events. And that becomes phobic anxiety when, crucially, you start avoiding those situations. The sources really highlight that avoidance part as the defining factor for phobias.
Okay, so it shows up in different ways, different intensities, but why? Where does it come from? Is there like one main culprit the sources point to?
This is really important. The sources are very, very clear. There is no single cause. It's not that simple. Anxiety usually grows out of this complex web of different factors.
Like what?
Well, long-term stuff like your genetic predispositions, maybe your upbringing. Then there are more recent things like major life stressors, big
Sure.
changes. And then, and this is critical for the strategies there, are the maintaining causes.
Maintaining causes.
Yeah, things in your current life, your behavior, your attitudes, your lifestyle that are actually keeping the anxiety going, feeding it.
So you can't just say, oh, it's my genes, nothing I can do, or it's all my childhood's fault.
Nope. The sources specifically warn against those kinds of single cause fallacies, like the biological one thinking it's only brain chemistry, ignoring how stress impacts that chemistry, or the psychological one blaming it only on the past, ignoring biology. They make the point that nature and nurture, they're not separate tracks. They're constantly interacting, shaping things together.
Like threads woven together in a fabric.
That's a great analogy. It's often impossible to pull them apart cleanly. Yeah. But here's where the sources get really practical. Okay, you can't change your genes or rewrite history, but they shift the focus hard onto those maintaining causes.
Because those are the things you can change.
Exactly. Those are the things in your day-to-day life, your current habits of body and mind that you actually have some influence over, starting right now.
Perfect. Okay, so let's shift gears then. Let's build that toolkit. Where do these sources suggest starting to tackle those maintaining causes? It sounds like they begin with the body.
Yes, they really emphasize that powerful connection between how you feel mentally and how you feel physically. That sense of being constantly wound up, uptight, as they put it.
Yeah, I think we all know that feeling. Shoulders up by your ears.
Right. So they outline some really fundamental techniques to work directly on that physical tension. Progressive muscle relaxation, PMR, is a classic.
That's the one where you tense and release.
Exactly. You go through different muscle groups, tense them consciously, hold it, and then deliberately let all the tension go. The sources say it's great for things like tension headaches, sore backs,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Just focusing on that feeling of release.
Without noticing the contrast, yeah. Then there's also passive muscle relaxation. Similar idea, but without the tensing part first. Maybe better if you're already sore. You just focus your mind on each muscle group and mentally encourage it to relax.
So more visualizing the letting go.
Okay. And this next one is quite clever. Cue-controlled relaxation is basically conditioning yourself. You pair a specific word, maybe relax or calm, with the physical act of relaxing, often using deep abdominal breathing. You practice it consistently, and eventually, just thinking or saying that cue word can trigger your body to start relaxing more quickly, on demand almost.
Like saying, breathe in, relax,
Yeah.
and training your nervous system.
That's exactly the idea the sources put forward. It's not just thinking nice thoughts. It's building a physiological response through practice. And you mentioned abdominal breathing. The sources stress why that's so important.
Right, belly breathing.
Yeah, because when we're anxious, we tend to breathe really shallowly up high in the chest. That pattern actually mimics the body's stress response, hyperventilation, and can make anxiety symptoms worse.
Wow, so the way you breathe could actually be feeding the anxiety.
It absolutely can be part of the loop. Abdominal breathing, where you inhale deeply so your belly expands, is naturally slower, more rhythmic. The sources suggest maybe counting like breathe in for 4, out for 4, perhaps a short pause. The real key they mention is doing it consistently. Over time, it helps change your body's default setting to something calmer.
Okay, so we're laying a groundwork by relaxing the body, muscles, breathing. What about the mind? The sources talk about using imagination deliberately, right?
Yes, guided visualization or imagery. So instead of letting your mind just spin out with worst-case scenarios, you actively choose to create peaceful, calming scenes in your mind's eye.
Like picturing a favorite peaceful place. A beach, a forest.
Whatever works for you. Something that genuinely brings a feeling of calm. They also touch on meditation, acknowledge it takes regular practice, but the payoff can be huge. Often using the breath or maybe a simple word, a mantra, as a focus point, and even something simple like putting on calming music can help nudge your emotional state away from anxiety.
And then exercise. The sources seem pretty emphatic about this one. They call it one of the most powerful and effective methods.
Well, they really do. It's highlighted as a major strategy. Exercise gives your body a healthy, natural way to burn off that pent-up fight-or-flight energy.
Completing the stress cycle.
That's a good way to think about it, yeah. It helps metabolize the excess stress hormones, like adrenaline. And they note it's particularly good for reducing that anticipatory anxiety, the worry about what's coming.
So it helps you feel less jittery and on edge beforehand.
Exactly. Plus, the sources list a ton of other benefits. Just feeling better overall, sleeping better, concentrating more easily, maybe relying less on things like alcohol or other substances people sometimes use to cope with anxiety.
And what kind of exercise is best?
For anxiety specifically, they suggest aerobic exercise is generally the most effective activities that get your heart rate up and use large muscle groups like running, swimming, cycling, brisk walking, dancing.
Things that get you moving.
Right. And they tackle the common excuses too, I don't have time, too tired, it's boring.
Yeah, the usual suspects.
They kind of reframe them, like no time is really about priorities, is managing anxiety worth scheduling. Too tired. Well, often moderate exercise actually gives you more energy. Boring. Find something you actually like, or do it with music or a friend, or listen to, well, a deep dive maybe.
There you go. Multitasking.
Oh,
Okay, so body relaxation, mental imagery, powerful exercise. What about what we eat and just how we live day to day?
crucial connection there too, according to the sources. Diet and overall lifestyle. Caffeine is a big one they flag.
My morning coffee.
Well, it's a stimulant, right? It directly boosts stress hormones like norepinephrine and adrenaline, kicks your sympathetic nervous system, the alert system, into higher gear. They even mention it can deplete vitamin B1, which helps with stress.
So that energy kick might actually be making anxiety worse for some people.
For many, yes. The recommendation in the sources is generally under 100 milligrams a day if you're prone to anxiety. And they suggest tapering off slowly if you decide to cut back to avoid withdrawal jitters.
Good tip. And sugar. You mentioned a sugar roller coaster. What's that about?
This is a really key insight from the sources. Lots of refined sugar, or simple carbs can cause these rapid spikes in blood sugar, followed by a crash. When your blood sugar dips too low, that's hypoglycemia, your body tries to fix it by releasing stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol.
The stress hormones again?
Exactly. And here's the kicker. The symptoms of low blood sugar, feeling shaky, nervous, heart palpitations, lightheaded, can feel almost identical to anxiety symptoms.
Wow, so you might think you're having an anxiety spike, but it could actually be your blood sugar crashing.
It's definitely possible and maybe even common. So the sources strongly suggest dietary changes to smooth things out. Cut way back on simple sugars and refined starches, swap in more fruits and complex carbs, and try eating smaller meals more often, or having snacks with protein and healthy carbs between meals.
Keeping that blood sugar level steady. Makes sense. Anything else on the diet front?
They briefly mentioned a couple other ideas. One is potentially shifting towards more vegetarian-style eating, which they suggest can help with acid-alkaline balance and maybe vitamin absorption. Another is looking at macronutrient balance, making sure you get enough protein relative to carbs and fats, maybe aiming for something like a 30% protein, 30% fat, 40% carb ratio.
Why protein?
Because protein provides the amino acids your body needs to make neurotransmitters, like serotonin, which plays a big role in mood and calm.
Okay, so eating right isn't just good for you generally. It's presented as a direct tool for managing the biological side of anxiety.
Spot on. It's about reducing those internal triggers. And that flows right into the broader idea the sources talk about, actively nourishing yourself. They frame this as totally essential, not some kind of optional luxury.
Not self-indulgence, but self-preservation.
You got it. And this includes getting enough sleep, obviously, but also consciously making time for downtime and recreation. They actually break down time into 3 types, which I found interesting. Rest, just pure passive letting go, doing nothing. Recreation, things you do purely for fun, play.
Ah.
And relationship, connecting meaningfully with others.
That's a helpful distinction. And they actually suggest doing less. That feels almost revolutionary today.
It's a strong message in the material, yeah. Being willing to consciously say no, reduce commitments, and shift your focus away from just constantly achieving and ticking boxes towards appreciating the process of living, how you spend your time, who you're with, allowing space to just be that's presented as maybe more important than relentless productivity.
That requires a real mental shift. And sleep, obviously, huge for anxiety.
Absolutely critical. The sources give lots of practical tips for healthy sleep hygiene. Regular bedtime, cool dark room, avoiding screens before bed, getting exercise earlier, watching caffeine and heavy meals late in the day. They also warn against trying too hard to force sleep, because that just creates more anxiety about sleeping.
Right, the trying makes it worse. What about those little breaks during the day, mini breaks?
Yeah, just 5 or 10 minutes every hour or two.
Yeah.
The idea is to pace yourself deliberately. Step away from the task, rest your eyes, maybe stretch, just mentally reset. The sources suggest you might actually end up being just as productive, maybe even more so, but with way less burnout and stress building up.
And daily self-nurturing acts, like small kindnesses to yourself.
Definitely. Framing it as building your inner resources, not something you have to earn. Simple things. Reading for pleasure. Enjoying something sensory like a warm bath or music. Spending a few minutes in nature doing something fun, or just doing something purely because you want to, without needing another justification. Making these small things a regular habit, especially when things feel tough, helps build that resilience they talk about.
Okay, solid foundation. Body, mind, diet, lifestyle. But what about the thoughts? That internal chatter, the worry that just won't quit for so many people.
Right. Now we get to the cognitive battleground, as the sources frame it. They explain how that negative self-talk, especially the endless what-if questions and catastrophizing, really pour fuel on the anxiety fire.
Catastrophizing, that's like expecting the absolute worst outcome.
Exactly. And it's usually a double whammy. You overestimate how likely the bad thing is to happen, and you underestimate your ability to actually cope with it if it did.
Like thinking before a job interview, what if I completely blank? They'll think I'm an idiot, I'll never get a job, it'll be awful.
Perfect example. So the sources offer a really structured way to challenge this, broken down into 3 key steps. First, identify the distorted thought. Get specific. Turn the vague what if into a clear statement you can examine, like, I will completely blank and they will think I'm an idiot.
Making it concrete, less fuzzy.
Yes, drag it out into the open. Second step, question its validity. Really interrogate that thought. Ask realistic questions. Okay, what are the actual chances I'll completely blank? How often does that happen before? Even if I stumble, is it guaranteed they'll think I'm an idiot? And even if this interview doesn't go perfectly, can I handle it? have I handled difficult things before?
Applying some logic and evidence against the fear.
Precisely. Gathering your own evidence, being realistic, remembering your strengths and past coping successes. And the third step, replace that distorted thought with a more balanced, realistic one based on your questioning. So instead of I'll blank and be seen as an idiot, it might become I might feel nervous and I might stumble on a question, but I've prepared and I can handle feeling uncomfortable. It's unlikely I'll completely blank, and even if the interview isn't perfect, I'll survive it and learn from it.
And they give specific examples for common fears walking through these steps.
Yeah, they use examples like fear of illness or public speaking to really illustrate how you apply this process. They even suggest maybe using a worksheet or just index cards to practice this until challenging those thoughts becomes more of a habit.
That feels very practical, very doable. What about just that nagging, obsessive worry feeling stuck in a loop?
Yeah, the sources definitely address that worry spiral. They mention distraction techniques as a first aid kind of thing, a way to interrupt the loop temporarily.
Like what?
Oh, you know, getting physically active, throwing yourself into a creative project, maybe even developing a positive obsession or hobby. But they're also clear. Distraction is helpful in the moment, but it doesn't solve the underlying issue. Real mastery involves learning to face the anxiety more directly.
So distraction is like hitting pause, but not stop. What else?
They introduce some really powerful ideas,
Yeah.
drawing from things like acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. One key concept is diffusion.
Diffusion, like unfusing.
Exactly. It's about learning to step back from your thoughts, to see them as thoughts, just words and images passing through your mind, rather than getting totally fused with them or treating them as absolute truths or commands you have to obey.
So noticing the thought instead of being caught up inside it.
Right. The question isn't, is this thought true?
Right.
But rather, is this thought helpful? Is paying attention to this thought, buying into it, moving me towards the kind of life I want, or is it just getting me stuck?
How do you do that?
They suggest techniques like mentally adding the phrase, I'm having the thought that, before the worrying thought, or visualizing your thoughts as leaves floating down a stream, just watching them drift by without grabbing onto them.
Yeah.
Or even, and this sounds odd, but can be effective, try singing your worried thought to a silly tune like Happy Birthday.
Singing, I'm gonna fail the exam to happy birthday.
Yeah. It sounds bizarre, but it instantly changes your relationship to the thought, right? It takes away its power and seriousness. It creates distance.
We can see that. It kind of highlights the absurdity. Okay, what else for worry?
Another technique they discuss is worry exposure. This is more direct. It involves setting aside a specific limited time each day, say 15 minutes, to deliberately focus on a particular worry. You write down the worst-case scenario in detail, and then you vividly imagine it happening over and over again.
Making yourself worry on purpose. That sounds hard.
It does feel counterintuitive. But the goal, the sources explain, is actually habituation. You're trying to get bored with the worry. By repeatedly exposing yourself to the feared thoughts and images in a controlled way, they start to lose their shock value, their emotional punch.
Ah, like listening to the same scary song over and over until it's not scary anymore.
Kind of like that, yeah. So when the worry pops up later, spontaneously, your brain is less likely to go into high alert because, as the sources phrase it, you've already worried yourself into the ground over this. Its power diminishes.
Okay, reducing the fear factor through repetition. Any other worry strategies?
They mention simply postponing worry, like if a worry pops up, you tell yourself, okay, I'll deal with that during my designated worry time at 5 p.m., and then deliberately shift your focus. And critically, planning effective action.
Taking action.
Yeah. If the worry is about a genuine problem you can do something about, the very act of sitting down, breaking the problem down, brainstorming solutions, and making a concrete plan can be incredibly anxiety-reducing. It shifts you from feeling like a passive victim of the worry to someone who has agency, who's taking steps. That fosters hope.
Right, moving from, oh no, to, okay, what can I do? Oh, that makes sense. This leads us naturally to facing fears more directly, especially phobias, where avoidance is such a big part.
And the sources are absolutely clear on this. Avoidance is the fuel for phobias. Running away from the feared situation gives temporary relief, sure, but it screams to your brain, see, that thing is dangerous, and I can't handle it. The only way to truly overcome it, they argue, is to gradually face it. That's the core of exposure therapy.
That sounds daunting to a lot of people, I imagine.
It can be, definitely. But the key the sources emphasize is that it's gradual and systematic. You don't just jump into the deep end. You work with someone, or carefully on your own, to create a hierarchy.
A hierarchy, like a ladder.
Exactly. A list of steps related to your fear, starting with something that causes only mild anxiety, and slowly, step by step, working your way up to things that feel more challenging, ultimately reaching your goal situation.
So if you're terrified of elevators, maybe step 1 is just standing near one. Step 2 is pushing the button. Step 3, getting in with the door open, building up slowly.
Precisely. They give examples for things like elevators or fear of flying, and they make an important distinction between coping exposure, where maybe at first you use your breathing techniques or coping thoughts while you're doing the scary thing, and full exposure.
What's the difference?
The goal of full exposure is to eventually be able to face the situation without relying heavily on those coping tools. It's about building genuine confidence that you can handle the anxiety and the situation itself, not just that you can manage it if you use your techniques. It's about eventually throwing away the safety crutches, as they call them.
So the aim isn't just white-knuckling through it, but actually feeling more capable.
That's the ultimate goal. Yeah. Mastery and confidence. They stress sticking with it even when it feels uncomfortable, letting the anxiety rise and fall without escaping. Each time you do that successfully, you're gathering powerful evidence that contradicts the fear. You learn you can tolerate the feeling, and the catastrophic outcome didn't happen, or you handled it.
What about imagery exposure?
That's often used as a first step, or alongside real-life exposure. You use your imagination to mentally rehearse going through your hierarchy steps. You visualize yourself successfully facing the feared situation, managing the anxiety. It helps prepare you for the real thing.
So a structured, gradual way to confront avoidance and build real confidence. Okay, we've covered a ton of strategies: body, mind, diet, lifestyle, thoughts, worry, facing fears. How do you put it all together when anxiety just ambushes you in the moment?
Right, the coping on the spot strategies. The very first thing the sources emphasize is actually a bit counterintuitive. Try to accept the initial wave of physical symptoms. Don't immediately fight it.
Just let it be there.
For a moment, yes. Acknowledge it. Okay, here's that feeling again. Remind yourself it's just adrenaline, it's uncomfortable but not dangerous, and it will peak and pass, usually within minutes. They say lean into it briefly.
Okay, so accept the initial surge. Then what? Don't just stay there. Right.
Definitely not. Acceptance first, then action. The sources strongly advise against just freezing or retreating. You need to channel that energy. Some practical things they suggest are talk to someone supportive if possible, get up and move around, engage in some simple, routine physical task like washing dishes or tidying up just to redirect that nervous energy.
Channeling the jitters.
Exactly.
Right.
Or use simple distraction to pull your focus back to the present moment, just temporarily. They even suggest, interestingly, getting angry not at people, but at the anxiety itself.
Like, get lost, anxiety, I'm busy.
Kind of like that. It's about changing your emotional state, asserting yourself against the feeling. Other ideas include doing something immediately pleasant, even something small, or using a quick cognitive shift, reminding yourself, this feeling is temporary, or I am safe right now, or I've gotten through this feeling before.
And those coping statements we talked about earlier fit right in here.
Perfectly.
Yeah.
Having a few short, powerful pre-written statements ready to go can be incredibly helpful. Things like, this will pass, or it's just anxiety, it can't actually hurt me, or I can handle this feeling. The sources suggest writing them on index cards you can keep handy.
And related, but maybe deeper, are affirmations.
Right. Affirmations are aimed more at shifting those deeper underlying core beliefs and attitudes that might be fueling the anxiety long term. It's a practice, something you rehearse regularly to gradually change your fundamental outlook.
How does that work?
It's about consciously replacing those ingrained negative thought patterns, like maybe this is unbearable or I'm not strong enough, with more positive, realistic, and empowering statements, like replacing this is unbearable with I'm learning I can cope better than I thought, or countering that why me, feeling with something like life is a learning process, challenges help me grow.
So actively choosing thoughts that build resilience and peace.
Exactly. The sources list some powerful examples. I am learning to let go. I am mastering worry. I choose peace over fear. I am building confidence in myself. They even provide a full script for overcoming fear that you could potentially record and listen to regularly, reinforcing these more helpful perspectives.
You know, it feels like all these strategies really circle back to what the sources said earlier about why anxiety seems so common today. The crazy pace of life, the lack of clear values, sometimes feeling disconnected.
They absolutely tie it all together at the end. That fast pace makes us feel fragmented, stressed, highlighting why things like rest, pacing, and downtime are so important. Uncertainty and shifting values can feed anxiety, and they suggest that simplifying your life can actually help you reconnect with what truly matters to you, which reduces that background hum of unease. And social isolation, feeling disconnected, that definitely makes us feel more vulnerable.
And simplifying life can help combat that disconnection.
That's a key point they make. Simplifying, whether that means literally downsizing possessions, being more mindful about media and phone use, spending more time in nature, learning to say no, reducing clutter, creates space. Not just physical space, but mental and emotional space.
Space for what?
Space for connection, the sources argue. Connection with family, friends, community, nature, and maybe most importantly, connection with yourself. They suggest that this kind of intentional simplicity fosters those connections and helps tackle the problem of anxiety at its roots, by directly countering that feeling of disconnection that's so pervasive.
Wow, okay. So the toolkit isn't just about slapping bandages on symptoms. According to these sources, it's potentially about cultivating a way of living that's just fundamentally less breeding ground for anxiety in the first place.
It's a really holistic picture they paint. Acknowledging the complexity, yes, but also offering so many tangible levers you can pull: physical, mental, emotional, lifestyle.
We've certainly covered a huge amount of ground here, from really understanding what anxiety is and isn't to building this incredible toolkit. The physical relaxation, the exercise, the diet, the lifestyle changes, challenging those sticky thoughts, handling worry, facing fears step by step, coping in the moment, and even simplifying life.
And the core message threaded through all these sources seems to be that while anxiety is tough and it comes from many places, you're definitely not helpless. There's so many tools available, and you absolutely have the capacity to actively manage it, to lessen its grip on your life.
But like anything worthwhile, it takes practice, right? Consistency and persistence. It's not a one-time fix.
No, it's definitely a journey of building skills and resilience over time. Which leads to maybe an interesting final thought.
Go on.
Perhaps, true freedom from anxiety isn't necessarily about eliminating every last symptom forever. Maybe it's more about learning how to show up fully for your life, to stay present and engaged even when things feel uncertain, because you trust that you have the inner strength and the tools you need to navigate whatever comes your way.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. Building the capacity to navigate life, anxiety, and all. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.